let me do, let's do a couple of procedural things. This is the Capital Program Committee, call this meeting to order. Present this morning are Peter Kaiser, Richard Hussey, Jason Bridges, myself, Peter McEachern, and Nat Lowell, and we have school and IT ASGIS here with us. And can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Okay, that carries unanimously, no. And it looks like we are probably being audio video recorded. I'm looking for a little red light, I don't
Yes,
see
sir.
it.
Yeah, it's red.
Okay, great. Is there any public comments? Okay, for the record, there are no members of the general public here. Can I get are we on a review or approval of the August 22nd minutes? It says both, so just curious, which did we
We
review?
sent them out, so I guess approval?
Okay, so can I get a motion to approve the minutes of August 22nd?
There'd have to be a couple changes if we're gonna do that.
Okay, so let's get a motion to review, continue review.
So moved.
Okay, since we had it. Okay, carries unanimously, we don't need a motion for that. We're gonna jump right into overview and discussion of capital requests for the school and the out years. And with that, Michael, if you would be so kind, everyone, just for the minutes to, the first time you speak, state your name for Terry, and then she'll pick up voices as she goes.
Okay. Michael Cosworth, Superintendent of Schools, Nantucket Public Schools. I would like to make an introduction of Dr. Elizabeth Hallett, who goes by Beth, who is the new Deputy Superintendent and will be taking the reins over by the end of the year. So, great to have her. I think everybody knows the other school players that are here, and I'm going to let Diane start to take you through, and I probably will interject more than she wants, but that's,
It's not true.
so go ahead.
Okay, Diane O'Neill, Director of Facilities and Grounds, Nantucket Public Schools. The first thing we have on our request is the Bobcat replacement. The Bobcat was purchased initially, it was used in 2004. We have gone through several mechanical issues in the past few years. Last winter, it actually sat for almost 5 months because we couldn't even find anyone to work on it. It's in really rough shape. We use this equipment for many, many, many grounds functions. We use it for plowing, digging, moving large objects. We use it almost every single day. Recently, they actually took some metal and screwed it to the floor because it didn't have a floor anymore. It's in pretty bad shape. And then yesterday, it blew another hydraulic line, and the grounds crew was on the ground and took it apart, and they're trying to fix it. So it definitely is in need of replacement. It's not something that we take lightly because it is expensive. I did attach a quote to replace it, and it's $64,419. I asked for $65,000 only because by the time we buy this, it'll probably be $65,000. Anyway, are there any questions on the Bobcat?
Just one?
Yes.
Can you wait to replace this, to go through the approval procedure?
Yes, I think so. I mean, we're definitely limping along, but I think we can get through the winter with it maybe, and hopefully, we do have a grounds person right now that's mechanically inclined, so he was the one on the ground yesterday, taking it apart and,
You can get hoses made.
trying to get the hoses made and,
Two places that do it.
yeah, and that's what they did yesterday. So,
Yes.
yes, we can wait until,
Okay, in your 10-year lookout, how many other vehicles and,
so there's a few, in our grounds equipment, I know I have it in here, in FY '23, we're asking for 150, only because the F-250s that we have right now are getting on in years. One is a 2005 and one is a 2009. We did replace one 2 or 3 years ago. We bought an F-350. All of the vehicles that we do have, other than the one that we just replaced, are two-wheel drive, not four-wheel drive, which actually doesn't make sense to me because we use them for plowing. So as we go forward, would like to replace this equipment with four-wheel drive vehicles. There are also some mowing machines that are coming up in age, and we're really careful about the maintenance and keeping up with, the maintenance, and the PM work, and so it's just starting to age, and they're all aging out within, in the next probably 5 or 10 years. It just happens. I mean,
Is
just
the
like a
skid
personal.
steer a track kind of wheel or tires?
They're tires.
Is that we could keep them?
I'm sorry?
That's what you're gonna keep, right?
Yes,
Okay.
tires. Mhm.
Oh.
It's just easier on the
Yeah,
fields.
No, I know, I was just curious about plowing sidewalks, I'm sure they've got all the attachments.
Mhm. So when we bought the two Kubotas 2 years ago, we bought a plow, we bought one with a dump body and a spreader.
Yeah,
They've been extremely helpful
Sidewalks.
instead of buying another truck.
Right,
Because the
yes.
trucks are heavy and we don't want them on the fields. They sometimes inadvertently run over an irrigation head and break it. With the Kubota, it's a lot less. It's lighter, it's easier, they're easier maneuvered, and they can plow the sidewalks. We have a lot more sidewalks
Yeah.
now.
yeah.
Peter?
It's a tried and true Bobcat.
Yes.
What series number?
It's on here.
6, 8, or is it 100?
Oh, it's
No,
there.
I didn't ask.
There's 3 different quotes. Or 3 different pages.
It's a
Sorry.
5600.
Okay.
Okay, 5,600.
What, seeing you have a Bobcat, of course, and I would never buy used. I'd always, before I buy a new one, I would always look at what the cost would be to actually rent it or
Oh.
keep it instead of buying it. And if you have Kubotas for all the multiple uses, what are you specifically using the Bobcat for?
The Bobcat has a bucket
Yep,
that we
understood.
use a lot of times when we are plowing, the snow gets heavy.
Yep.
We can't push it anymore.
Move
They
it.
go in with the Bobcat and they move it. And I have to say, when it's a really bad storm, Restrucking has been instrumental to come in there with their front end loader and move snow for us.
And what is it, a yard bucket?
Yes, it's a small,
And you're using it.
and we have the
primarily
bucket.
because of
I
the
don't need to
width?
buy another bucket.
Yeah.
I'm just,
So if you have Kubotas,
we
what
too.
series?
I don't remember.
My only thought is.
I can certainly
it's
get
good to
that for
be.
you.
It's good to have, just where I come from a rolling stock standpoint, it's good if you have Kubotas to kind of keep with that. You one-stop shopping on repairs and maintenance and dealing with one distributor.
But I asked Joe, it doesn't seem that the Kubotas are heavy duty enough to move that snow, that earth, there's no bucket, there's no,
Equivalent to a Bobcat.
right, like carrying a tree across the campus and,
There is different series. I mean, it's just good to, I like Bobcats, so don't get me wrong, I just wanted to ask you questions. to
it's
see
just
what you're
more,
using it for.
it's just a heavier duty piece of
So
equipment.
primarily your use is to, is it once a week you're using it?
No, they use it almost every day.
Okay.
And it's interesting because this time of year, we're trying to get ready for school, they're really using. They're moving equipment with it. I
And
saw them the other
attachments
day.
you have now, or just the bucket?
Just a bucket, and the other day, I saw them moving the soccer nets with the Bobcat. You attach it, they move it, it's a heavy piece of equipment, they have to move. The benches, they'll move with it.
And we don't own any other attachments?
I don't think we have forks or anything like that for it. At least
Does
I
it ever
haven't
get used
seen
by any
any.
other department, or just stays on school property?
Stays on school property. It's a school piece of equipment. Most of our equipment is stored inside, except the Bobcat. We don't have anywhere to put it, because the mowers and the spreaders and the Kubotas are all inside stored, so they're very well taken care of.
It may be a good thing just to.
I can look
even
into
ask
a
one of the
Kubota.
I'd ask one of the golf course superintendents on an island.
Mhm.
Sometimes they're a good source of information, just because they buy a rolling stock. It's probably 20 times more than what the school department owns and probably DPW together. Sometimes there's volume buys that you can procure. I know that
Mhm.
we're the town, we're not a private entity.
Yep.
It's just good to shop.
Yeah, absolutely.
Combine items.
Peter?
Sorry.
I'm curious, this is probably for anybody, but what's the typical useful life for one of these that's brand new? obviously depends on maintenance, but I mean, this one was used by
Depends on if you have
2000.
a mechanic.
Right, this one was used by 2004, we've had it for 15 years.
And how hard do you use it?
And hour to use it, right, I mean, 15 years for one that we bought used in 2004 seems like a
pretty
pretty
good,
good,
yeah.
you know,
It had a good
lifespan
run.
of it, so,
Yeah,
you know, I would think that it's probably coming due at some point soon, if not now.
Yeah, sounds like it had a good run.
Yeah.
Diane, the only comment I have is I didn't see additional attachments, maybe I missed it, but for forks, no, attachments for the unit, not to the request.
This wasn't there?
No.
Like the,
Physical attachments for the
Forklift,
unit, not for the
Oh,
request.
because we have some. Steve.
Okay, so
So we would just reuse them. You know, Joe and I talked about it, and he said, we really don't need
That's what you want.
new attachments. We're just
Okay.
gonna use the old, what we have sitting in the yard.
I thought you just asked if there were attachments
I
and.
think he meant something, he's comparing it to two different pieces of equipment, I believe, what Peter's saying.
I thought that's.
So
what
you
he
have,
meant.
you have
Bobcat
forks
bucket.
and.
I don't know that we have a forklift attachment. I know we have a bucket, I know we have a plow that goes onto it. I don't know if there's a forklift. I can certainly find out, take photos
I
and send it
don't,
to you.
I'm not asking you to, I just was curious if you had them, and if you don't, you know, when you're purchasing,
get them.
Right.
get it, it's getting shipped, it's gonna be, you know,
Right.
maybe you get a little, yay, can you throw in the forks at 50% off? Whatever
Yeah.
you need to do for your numbers to work
Okay.
for you is what's important, is, you know, obviously they need to work for us for a recommendation also. But the idea was just, if the guys are using the equipment for things other than moving snow, it just seems to me that we should, if we support the recommendation for the acquisition, then we should support the acquisition for the attachments that actually help them to do other things and do it safely. So forks, there's other equipment that, you know, a single pole attachment, a lot of these can be actually added to the bucket. So it's more versatile in the field versus having to get involved with taking the bucket off and putting a new attachment on. If they're not doing heavy-duty work, they don't need it to be joined to the frame. So that was my only comment.
Yeah, there is a.
Soil conditioner,
Attachment.
With the new one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
well,
two.
yeah, so-
so the snow pusher and the, okay.
This bucket is
So see if you get some forks thrown in.
I will, thank
That's
you.
the short on that one.
Okay.
Okay, great. Why don't we do the, unless you have an order, unless anyone has any other questions? Okay, great. Why don't we do the building improvements?
Sure.
That we're
Happy
able to
to.
get in?
Fill that one out.
I'm just, I don't know what to tell you.
We'll pass it down, I'll give it a try in
I
between.
just texted Brian, see if he knows my.
So,
I swear I
this
had a
is an
separate
annual
number.
request, and it's generally for improvements to all buildings. So we went to NPS building improvements. I know historically, we did separate buildings for different money, and what we're finding is you might have $15,000 left for the high school, but I need work done at the elementary school. So we've gone to NPS, Nantucket Public Schools, building improvements. Overall, we asked for $300,000 a year. And I did attach a bunch of things that we'd like to do. This past year, I just wanted to give you sort of what we spent the money on last year. We had some HVAC work done, we had some gravity ventilators replaced on the high school roof. We had some clapboard replaced on the elementary school, on the backside of the elementary school by the kindergarten driveway. We took up the carpet in room 14 at CPS and just basically, there was tile underneath, and we waxed the tile, and we're trying to get rid of carpets because it's difficult to keep them clean and keep them up. I did a bid for 5 classrooms in the elementary school to replace the kitchen cabinets. I don't know if you all remember that from last year. One bid came in at $92,000 and one bid came in at $51,000. Clearly, we took the $51,000, so that isn't completed yet. We're working with the contractor who is actually an Island person, it's Dave Devendorf, he owns Nantucket Kitchen Design, right? And we'll be doing that on weekends in September. The cabinets are, he took the old ones out, and we're working toward that. We did some serious security servers replaced. Our servers are already 5 or 6 years old just for the security system, and they were starting to fail. They were dropping cameras, they were just old, and they've gone through their useful life. Most of the money was used for the library renovation. I don't know if anyone's seen the middle school, high school library. It looks amazing. Please go and look. I really like it.
That looks great.
We redid the conference room for the high school, the larger conference room. We had the carpet replaced. We use carpet tiles now everywhere we can. In case there's a spill, we can pull up one tile. We do have some attic stock, and we had that room painted. And then a small amount was used for the Bacchus Lane storage facility, which is up and running for the security cameras section. There's a security piece that's going on to that building. We used a small amount of the money for that. So I think it's really put to good use every year. There's $300,000 that we asked for. I'd like to continue with the elementary school kitchen cabinet project. There's some flooring in the elementary school I'd like to get replaced. Some shingling. We are looking at roofs now. Mr. Kozort's suggestion yesterday, I have scoured my resources looking for roof information, and I got in touch with Dave Kanyok, who used to be the facility director here, and he sort of pointed me where there might be a box of roof information. So we're gonna go looking around some more. There are some roofs that are showing some wear, and we're gonna start having to replace some.
I think we will always have the side shingling to replace. You know, every year,
Painting.
you're taking a side to address that in different schools, so that'll be ongoing.
Questions, Richard? Comments?
Did you spend all of the 300?
Yes, I think I have,
Okay.
I don't know because they haven't rolled capital over yet in Munis, so it's difficult. I'm trying to do my little addition subtraction thing as you're looking at the old and then the new, and I do not have my updated capital. So it's a tough thing to look at. I think I have about $9,000 left in last year.
Hard not to.
Any other? So, Diana, I think the only thing I would suggest is it would be helpful to us, plan your work your plan, budget being fundamental to that. And you guys are really great about it. But to start to drill down a little bit more into these things with, for example, shingling. You guys know you're gonna be doing it, so start to catalog that out as a subcategory of the building improvements, so that what we'll start to see is, I think from this position, we're starting to see over the course of the next 50 years, you know, there'll be a capital program committee and hopefully Nantucket Public School System, where trends are developing, where things are. It's just general information. You're going to break it down anyways, but it will also, obviously, it's probably information you're using, and if you have it in some type of a Excel sheet
Sure.
that goes under building improvements, those subcategories will also serve to start to give you, which I'm sure you're doing already, thoughtfulness of other areas where you're going to need to be making investments. The benefit for us is that in this program, we'll be able to pull it up as maybe that would be an attachment, and we would be able to look at the overview based on, you know, general numbers, not necessarily holding you to a specific dollar amount, but you're giving us subcategories.
So you're saying like windows over
Roofs.
time, roofs.
Yeah,
Single
yeah,
painting,
make a list.
facade
It's good,
over
it's good
time.
information. It gives us an opportunity to discuss things and kind of work as a team to see if we see holes in the plan or soft spots or just general information.
Sure.
So it's a longer term thing, really. It would get to out years, but I figured I'd mention it now.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts on building improvements? Richard?
Did you finish the security entrance situation? Is that
We're this close.
almost done?
The only thing left are the cores in the locks. There's 8. There's 4 on one side because there's 2 sets of double doors, and there's 4 on the other side. And the cores are still construction cores. So the contractor ordered cores from our manufacturer because our doors are very restrictive. You can't just go and make a key or a core. And they initially only ordered 4, not 8. And when they came, they didn't work. So they had to go back. And it was like a 3-month lead time. Anyway, we're almost there. I just need to get
So-
those cores in.
Yeah, that's the high school project. We, of course, with the new intermediate school, that was part of design.
Yeah.
easily done. The middle school, that tiny vestibule in front of the middle school was like the Taj Mahal getting it done. It was crazy. And then the high school, we went inside, taking inside space with the glass if you've walked in. The one where we, I think, got the most creative was at the elementary school, because we were originally going to build out in front and then decided to use the existing, and we put doors in with pass keys. So all 4 buildings are secure.
So during the day, the exterior doors are generally open, the exterior doors to the vestibule. You can get into the vestibule, but you can't get into the building unless you're buzzed in, unless you have a specific reason to be there. If you're just dropping off a lunch or a uniform, pass it through the window. The ESPs have slide windows, pass it through the window, thank you. Well, we don't want
Yeah.
people wandering around
No,
in our
I'm just,
buildings.
I'm trying to conjure the image of, I haven't actually seen it. I don't think,
It's
was
really
it?
great. I was there the other day. It's awesome.
Thank you.
Is it? Yeah. I mean,
It's all glass.
yeah. So it's not like a weird like, oh, I'm in this little room. Like it is
Right.
glass. You can see it. And it's
Not
you
like
know,
a
warm
prison-
and inviting, but it
prison
is a nice,
vegetable.
like, that's
Cameras
as
are
far as you
hooked
need to go.
up, security is
Was it
been
there during the
programmed.
last election period?
No.
The ballots?
I don't think so.
Okay, because that was probably the last time I was there, and I was just trying to,
No, we waited until
Recall it.
after annual meeting
okay,
to start it, so you wouldn't have noticed it at that point.
okay. Well, it's nice though, it
Handicap
works,
buttons are
it's in, and
programmed,
it
we're-
looks
I think it
attractive.
looks fine.
Yeah, it looks great.
Oh, I agree.
Good. All right, guys, so we're gonna, no other questions, we're gonna move on. So I just wanna, just very briefly, I'm gonna contain discussion on this because it's kind of necessary. We've got about an hour and a half total for the meeting, and I wanna go through everything in detail and cover our worries. The NPS land acquisition, I'm just gonna make a statement on it, and then we're gonna move forward.
Okay.
The Capcom, just so you're aware, and I don't know if you are, we made a formal recommendation last year that there be no funding for this request. However, we recognized and we do believe that it is an important topic, and we have had made a recommendation to advance the concept on a townwide basis for review by a focus group that would be convened to identify, what mechanisms and methods would best serve the overall goal, and how to implement it.
Okay, so should we take it out? Should
I-
we leave it in?
Brian asked us to pass along that it's something that on our end is still under consideration. He said that he and the town manager need to have some further discussions about it and just how it would function as a whole. So it's not necessarily off the table, it's just still under.
So I'll leave it alone for
Right.
now
So-
until we hear further.
Yeah, so Brian and I discussed it, and the idea is that we have a formal recommendation in place. It's not to suggest that that won't be considered, but it's in the overall context of the bigger picture. And the reason I'm containing discussion on it is aside from meeting with you all, we've spent quite a bit of time discussing it. So I just don't want to break into that until we have an opportunity to have both town admin and the finance director here with us. It's just not good use of our time. And if it is something that's determined to be specific at the school level, which I'm not precluding, aside from our prior recommendation, then we would ask you to come back in.
Okay.
So just so everybody knows what's going on. Okay, good. So the next is gonna be the, bear with me, sorry, I got
Sure.
a few different documents here. We've got campus-wide improvement plan.
Yes, so the public schools asked for $250,000 last year to do a campus-wide improvement plan. We just did an RFQ. We had a committee sit and go through the review of the responses, and we chose SMRT to do our campus-wide assessment right now. It's it's $50,000 to put all of the ideas together. This is a planning tool. Where are things gonna end up? If we have to build a middle school, where is it going? And then if it goes there, where is that field going? So we're looking at obviously things like a synthetic field for the football field, maybe one of the soccer fields. We're not sure how this is all going to shake out. That's why we went in this direction. Mike can probably speak to this.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in.
In depth.
Originally, this was, even before we built the intermediate school, we had the plan to move
Yeah,
forward on
I
the
remember.
athletic complex. And
Yeah.
as, as more and more kids kept coming, I sort of said, time out. You know, I know people love athletics, I know we'd love to upgrade our fields, but we need seats in the classroom before we need to do that. So we put that on hold, moved forward with the community's support on the school, but we haven't lost sight of the fact that we wanted to upgrade athletic facilities. But my concern is that it's greater than athletic facilities. We need to do a campus-wide design so that we know exactly where some things are going to go when it's time.
Yeah.
We don't want to put in a field and 5 years later say, that was the best site for the next
Yeah.
school. So we are engaging SMRT. We want them to look at three things. If and when a new facility is built, where is the most likely site? Is it on where the high school baseball field is now? Is it in the valley between the two schools? Where is that going to be? Once we decide that, then we can decide where the fields need to go. And one other thing that I have suggested that we incorporate into this design is if we were to build housing, where would it be? If we were to look at the model, and I've talked about Peter's model at the yacht club with dormitory housing, which was Huntington and gives them the best of both worlds in terms of people. Can we fit that into the campus site? And where might that go? Or do we build 5 one-bedroom standalones like across the street from the high school? A different model, would those be easier to site in this campus-wide design? So we're asking SMRT to take all of those pieces into consideration so that the town is prepared to move forward when it's time to move forward. And we don't have to spend the time then under duress thinking, okay, where are we gonna put a new school? Looking at this, if I may.
Yeah, please do.
If I may, I'm thinking, okay, if we have to build a new school, the two most likely places are here
Yep.
and here. Okay? Are there other properties, and this goes back to the property acquisition, I'll respect not going down that road, but looking at that would allow more flexibility in siting, yes. But my gut now would be here or here. And then the question is, what would it be? And we're not there yet.
Michael, I'm sorry, just to be clear, the athletic field along Sparks and the athletic field around Surfside Road are the two areas you're thinking of currently?
Those would be the two areas that I would,
Okay.
right now, say has the square footage to do something. But what is it that we're going to do? Right now, I would say make all of this the high school
Yeah.
and build a new middle school.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping we're talking 10 years from now, but our enrollment will dictate what happens. If we keep getting 50 kids a year, in 5 years, that's 250 more children. So that will dictate. Middle schools are cheaper than high schools, so that's why I would look at that. Another option
Kubotas
is,
are cheaper than Bobcats. Go ahead.
another option is making the vocational wing into academic space and building a new vocational building. I think that's an option, but I think that's a 10-year instead of a 25 or 30-year solution. And we're pretty tight sneakers at a high school right now. The wave that has gone through the primary and elementary schools have hit the middle school and high school, and we are, I think we expect to be close to 550 in the high school.
Michael, Rebecca has a question.
Is there, it might not be because I know how it is, but is there a potential to go up on the existing middle school since that's only one story?
No, but is that an option, to tear down and build a two-story here? I think it would be an option. The challenge to that is, where are you going to put kids for a year?
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's not an easy challenge when you're talking about 350 students. So, and my gut would be doing that versus building new, you know, the
So,
bones will still be the bones.
so the funding on this is, it's a request for 750,000.
Okay,
Right.
so,
Each year.
good question, because right now we're moving the baseball field from here over to here. We have the funding to do that in our phase
3?
2,
I don't even know.
phase 2 or
I have
3 or
about
phase
600,000 left in that.
So we're going to hope to get that done in this year. This is a terrible place for a baseball field with foul balls going onto, you know, cars
Yeah.
and all of that.
No, yeah.
The other, and then,
Oil tanks over there in the ground.
yeah, and then the other thing is over here, we're looking at this site, do we need this much parking, or do we put in tennis courts? This community is pretty short on tennis courts, and so would we put in 5 tennis courts as part of our next phase for that? I think that's yet to be determined, but that's all part of the design and saying to the design architects, how do we best use our space? How do we maximize that space? And I don't think you can make those decisions until you know where the next school might go.
Okay. So, I'd like to kind of talk, if there's not, I don't want to get too far down into what's going to go where, because obviously that's
Yeah.
not something that's, but if there's questions or comments on dollar numbers or previous approvals and where monies are and how they're being spent, I'd like to go in that direction, please. Is there any thoughts or comments, Peter?
Just a question, I think it's good that somehow we handcuff you to use SMRT because you don't wanna reinvent the wheel. That thought process was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And it'd be a shame that somehow they weren't selected.
Right.
Actually, it would be
Yeah.
stupid if
Good
they
point.
weren't selected.
Well, that just happened 3 days ago.
Good.
They were selected.
And it's interesting because they actually, hands down, were the best
Yeah.
in the RFP responses. We vetted them
But it's so
thoroughly.
important if they already know what's
Right.
going on. We
Absolutely.
do that with VHB
Yep.
and the other ones,
I know.
Vita and all that. They know, once they get here, figure out the boat, figure out the dirt, they're all of a sudden, there are people. That's what happens.
I know, but we still have to go through procurement, so we did.
I know, that's crazy. Can I just ask a couple
Yeah,
of
go ahead,
things?
Nat.
Michael, I remember when you first floated all this, and I loved it. Like, this is the Lego block plan, flip-flopping around, making dirt over here, removing some over there. I didn't hear that what Rebecca brought up, I've not heard that one yet. That's cool, but would be hard to do with existing, I mean, that's gonna take over a year, so you have a cycle to go through. The football field, I can't remember what, I like getting rid of the baseball field in Sparks Ave for all the reasons you said. And the walkability of connecting to the other stuff is important, isn't it, for junior high? To be near the high school, if you put the junior high way over there, wouldn't that be kinda like, what about like wood shop, or, I don't know, I'm just wondering if it's too far away from.
Yeah.
Cause I'm thinking about the
That's their job.
1 through 3, or K through 3, that building's made out of cardboard. You know, I mean, that's gonna be coming down someday, there's gonna be another school.
Nat,
You know what I mean? So I know I'm not supposed to be talking about this, but this is wicked important.
no, I know,
It's a
but,
positive
yeah.
thing that the school has got it together, they know what they're doing, not to get all worked up in the community, because it's already sneaked out about this. just so you know.
Yeah.
It took 3 years for it to sneak out, but it snuck out recently. So, you know, we're not even at the shovel stage at all, so you gotta back up the bus and know that you're doing the due diligence with the SMRT.
Yeah, let's just make sure.
Leave it at that, right?
Okay, thank you. So I just want to be clear in my own thoughts. The athletic complex funding, which was, I think, 250 last year. So that is the actual, that more from athletic, and we discussed this, complex master plan to the full-on complex
Entire
master plan.
campus.
Okay, which was what we had discussed, and that's
So we
great.
thought, Steve, that we would do this RFQ first,
Yeah,
get our ducks in a row where things will land,
yeah,
and then start working on the actual
Yeah.
design with the
Yeah,
money.
Perfect.
And then we ask for money for construction, so say we do end up with enough room over there to put 5 tennis courts, we're going to need money to build them, so that would probably be something. The football field, we looked at a design at Sandwich High, it backs up into the hill, which alleviates all the ADA compliant issues, they build the stands in the hill, so the
yeah,
I know what you mean.
yeah, the
Accessibility
walkway,
is
the
there.
accessibility goes around the hill, it comes up to the back of the stands, you're not dealing with an elevator, which is extremely expensive. Things like that, and, you know, putting a track in, and having that a synthetic field. Mr. Kozart and I also talked about maybe another synthetic field, but we haven't really gotten in set.
Yeah, this is over time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is over time.
So where, I guess the thing I'm trying to understand is, just informational purposes at this point, is where in your process do the decisions fall on a timeline? And then how does that relate to these funds, if approved, actually being expended during the fiscal year 21?
Right. So once we have the design, everything is sort of predicated on where things are going to go.
Yeah.
I would anticipate, once that's done, that that money will go either to tennis courts if they can fit in there, or probably because we're gonna have to do the football field in stages. It may be the turf, and then later comes the track, and then later, you know, the stands. So all of those are like dominoes
Yep.
based on, so, and we anticipate that it's going to be, you know, 750,000 over 5 years
And that,
to accomplish.
Yeah.
and that
you
your,
might have some
your
left over.
internal planning will result in actually needing, I'm trying to confirm,
Yeah.
the ask, the 750, for fiscal 21 construction.
I'm hoping that
Okay.
we get that, because I'm really hopeful, after talking to the architects about the tennis, that that will be the next step over there. And we'll need to build the driveways, and in this phase of Bacchus Lane, the conduits went in for some lighting and some security. So we have everything in the ground, we're ready to go with that. We will need cameras over there, we will need some lighting in the parking lot, obviously not a
But
lot,
it's
but
lighting that's going
straight down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other?
It's not going.
Okay, so I just have one other comment, and
Sure.
it's not to, it seems to me that if the plan hasn't, the master plan hasn't been really fully put together yet, which is what you're putting the RFQ out, I understand the need for the tennis courts, but, I mean, that plan, in a sense, you could be hog tying the consultants by designating that area for tennis courts in advance, whereas they may, it's just a comment, I'm not, where they may say, geez, you know, the way that we envision this, we actually want to make some change to the roadway. This will create a solution here, here, and here, which will create solutions here, here, and here. And as a result, that space, because it's up near residential, would be better as residential than tennis courts, and we can put the tennis courts here. And I'm not suggesting they're going to say that, but my concern is that if we go ahead with, we being you,
Right.
go ahead with designating a space in advance, it may dampen
Right.
the result.
We've only had a conversation, and what we have said to Dick Webb of SMRT, everything's on the table and nothing's on the table.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, that's good to know.
we aren't saying, we're thinking, would this work? And we want you to think about that, but here are the 5 components. You come back and give us a couple of different proposals on how those components would best fit.
Okay.
We really need to see what he comes up with. I mean, that's going to determine the direction.
Where you go, okay. Okay, that's good information, that's helpful. I think it's helpful, good to, also if people tune in.
Mr. Chair, ask a
To see
quick-
this. Now,
quick
go ahead.
follow-up. Can we keep SMRT for like this 5 years?
Yes, so that was what the RFQ was for.
So we
was
don't
for the
have
whole-
to start over?
I don't have to start over.
Thank you,
Yep.
perfect.
There was language in there that said it will
Yep,
go into the
some
next phase.
Kind of glitch, we
We're
don't want
going
to glitch
into the
there.
next phase, nope.
Got it.
Okay, great. So we're gonna go from there, we're gonna jump right into, your choice, the, IT infrastructure or the boiler.
Boiler.
I'll do IT infrastructure, I'll do
She's
boiler.
asserting
I'm a short timer, can you
Lame
tell?
duck,
You do what you want.
lame duck.
Well, I just thought that this is quick because I don't have a lot of
Go.
information on this.
Go ahead.
This is really,
Ah.
this is an every 3 or 4 years, they need to replace servers, things clearly are outdated and, Martin?
We've done some server replacements, but this is like Diane is pointing out, it's on schedule maintenance, which is done every 2 to 3 years. All of these have a certain amount of shelf life, if you want. We're trying to move to virtual servers as much as we can, and so that's part of net infrastructure improvements that's gonna cover that need. That's where we are at this point. I think we're working internally with Jen Erickson, the technology director, to fine tune the whole plan and do a better inventory of our equipment and infrastructure. So.
Okay, questions, comments, thoughts? So, Martin, you are going to the virtual network, is that what this is? I guess I would like to say that just as a procedural matter, we would like to have a little more documentation that, you know, if the introduction is kind of a summary, I think that's good, that's what it's for. But to have some idea of, you know, what it is, I personally, I don't know you guys if you want to say something differently, need to know what server type it is or,
Sure.
but to understand the fundamental aspects of the work, and that gives us an idea of how this relates to costs. And then it also gives us information for, you know, our collective database for the current year relative to past years and future years as we're going forward. So it's, I don't want to, I don't want
No,
to
I've asked
overstate it.
I've asked Jen for this information. This meeting came up a little faster than
You thought,
we thought, and Jen is in get ready for the start of school mode, so I haven't pushed her for that information because that's more important. But I agree, and we will provide it. With the caveat that, understand, technology is changing every 3 months.
sure.
I mean,
So fast.
we don't know
Yeah.
what we might need in 6 months or
Sure, yeah.
9 months, but we'll have more information for you.
Yeah, I think
That's
a
fair.
little more detail than
Yep.
a summary is
Yep.
important.
Sure.
And again, we don't need to know makes, models, and serial numbers.
Yep.
Any other thoughts on those, Peter?
I'm lucky I'm logged in.
Just with the, with IT, of course, it has an effect both on your capital budget, but also more importantly, your operating budget.
Yep.
From a FinCom standpoint, you know, going virtual, do you incur more monthly expenses that are expensed through operations? as opposed
Contracted
to-
services
Exactly,
instead
as
of-
opposed to a physical piece of equipment.
Yep.
So that's, I mean, that's the hat that I'll wear.
And it's
And who knows where it's gonna go.
it's not necessarily that we're gonna go full virtual. I'm just saying that this is part of it. We're part of the solutions that we've looked at. For certain things, we have to maintain on-campus servers. We just upgraded security servers as well, so that it's intertwined between the technology part and the security system of the school. So.
Peter brings up a good point. It's actually one I have on my notes to ask Karen when she comes up, is because we had approved a switch over to virtual, is what's your cost benefit analysis? What was anticipated versus what have you experienced? Because it's, you know, it's important. If we're just shifting money from one to the other, if it comes in as a capital savings, but then we've somehow increased our operating by some number that's
Yep.
got not an order of magnitude, but it's got some meaning to it. It's good for us to be aware. Okay, and now we get to Michael's boilers.
I love this
Yeah,
stuff.
just, go ahead, Diane, I won't.
The boilers are original to the building. The building was built in 1990. We are having more and more issues with them. The gaskets have been changed twice. We were told they can't be changed again. We had a lot of issues last year. Just they die. Wilkinson has to come on an emergency basis and fix them. And we approached them and asked for really general help. Like, what do you think? I mean, they're our contractor. They're the hospital's contractor. I think they're probably a lot of the town people's contractor.
Yes.
They're very, very reputable. They're very honest. And he came and met with Demo and I and said they need to be replaced. He did give us a really good, he gave us a little bit of a proposal, and he suggested that we use this boiler, and only because if we replace the two with this, we always have a backup. It is the high school, and it also is the emergency shelter, so we have to be very careful. We don't have to replace the exhaust, we don't have to change the breaching through the roof, which would probably be another 50 or 60,000 if we went down that road with a different kind of boiler. So this was a good suggestion for me. It really kind of resonated with me that this was a good idea. Like, these are gonna fit. They're also extremely more energy efficient. We talked about that, about the combustion efficiency, the thermal efficiency, and we absolutely have to get this done. I mean, these that we're replacing will be 40-year boilers. The ones we are replacing are 25-year boilers, and they're going to be 30 years old. So they've gone through their useful life. Through
Wait.
this process.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Would you say the ages again? Because I read through that in the description and I was confused. Could you
So
just?
they're supposed to be 25-year boilers. We're
Okay.
going up to,
Good
they're
enough.
almost 30 years old.
Useful life is 25, you've had them for
Right.
30.
The
Okay.
new ones, the useful life, they're telling us is 40 years. So I'll be dead and gone by the time somebody has to replace these again.
We hope. Or we
You
don't.
never know what they're
You
gonna
just
come up
never
with.
know.
There's a-
There is, I mean, these are the things that keep us
Up at-
awake at night.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, because if that goes down, we've got a major problem in servicing children, but also servicing the community. And when do they go down? They go down in the winter.
When it's 10 degrees out.
So there is nothing on our list that's a higher priority in my mind, and I'm hoping that we get through this next year, and then it won't be my problem. It'll be Beth's
That's how we
problem.
all feel. Once we run, we're good.
That's tongue in
So
cheek.
you'll hear about this again.
So, Richard, do you want to ask your question?
No.
Okay. I'll ask it for you when you get to it. Any comments on Peter's?
Just a quick
Yes.
question, if with the site plan and you have your oil tank in a physical location, and there may be the potential that moves, I mean the tank?
I have
Maybe your
not thought about
mechanical
moving that.
engineer, just in case.
Yeah.
Well,
maybe
I understand what you're saying.
Mechanical
In the
engineer should
design, the overall.
have that in the design of where the physical boiler is going is obviously in the same place, but
Mm-hmm.
if you have a longer run or shorter run, they'll want to captivate in their design something that
Yeah.
gives you flexibility.
Right.
That's
So,
it.
right.
I wouldn't say
Right.
change fuel.
No.
Not having to put a pump through.
Although
This
they
is
are
where-
dual fuel.
This is where you find out how unbiased I am about gas versus oil.
Mm-hmm.
So, what I would suggest, you're gonna have to do it. Wilkinson, I mean, you could get, there's other companies that
Well, I
are
have to
coming
bid
in
it
now.
out. There's no
No,
question.
I know. But just for everyone's information, there's, like, you see Daubert now, you see Rydell here now, sort of like CC Construction and Bobby Hour. They've jiggled their way in. There's a lot of work here, larger stuff, companies that are used to doing it. It's not that locals can't do it,
But it's a big
but they
system.
They can't.
can't do it.
They can't.
In a way that is reliable enough for something like this, okay? So this, what you guys gotta do, Diane,
Yes.
since you're not going nowhere and Michael just said he's leaving.
I have 6 years now.
Again.
I tried.
Yeah, so, you're gonna need above ground oil storage at some point. Okay, you're gonna have to do it. It's just gonna happen. I don't know where it's going,
I don't either.
but you're gonna have to do it. You're gonna have to figure that out with SMRT you know, and blah, 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 whatever, because, the underground oil is dumb because of the rules, it still make no sense, you gotta dig tanks up every 20 years that don't have anything wrong with
Bless
them.
you.
If you had to do that with propane, you'd be out of business, it's that crazy.
Okay.
So, there may be some options that I'm unaware of, the underground, that may be more permanent, in vaults, I'm not sure, but those have been changed once, Dan. I believe they dug those tanks up already one time.
Right, I found some information.
Something
Tim Lepre
happened
asked me for
when
some
Eric was still
information.
playing
It wasn't,
baseball.
it wasn't that
What
long
did
ago.
they do? It wasn't that long ago.
I wanna
I
say they
remember
replaced the
something.
tanks, but
Okay.
They're
I
in
can
the,
look it
they're
up.
in the on-deck circle
I can look
part
it up.
of the
That-
baseball field.
I gotta really, because we gotta,
yeah.
But
okay.
if you were asking this,
I-
you wouldn't stop yourself.
I'm just trying to look at time.
Okay,
I
no,
don't-
but it's gonna be,
I
it's a
would've
great
stopped,
project.
I would've stopped
but
that,
there's
make
gonna be
sure
like
you
2
plan
parts to
ahead.
this,
Yeah,
If
You
that's
know,
something that you
so
guys
it's
wanna-
good.
so it's good.
Very
Yeah,
happy
it's
about
not, it's not personal, it's just
Gotta happen in
timing.
the summertime too, Michael.
I can't hear you.
The
Has to
DPW
happen in the
just
summer.
did some underground tank
So.
removal
Okay.
stuff, so if that comes up, you should get in touch with Rob.
Okay, I also did it when I worked for the town.
Oh, yeah.
I did the Island Home one,
Oh, so
so
never
we
mind.
removed
Not
the
me.
underground tank.
Underground tank.
Yeah.
So the question I have for Richard, because he's had a trend here, is can this wait? And then the other question that if you might bootstrap with is, what's your annual expense on this for repairs? And what are you anticipating it will be between now and July 1st of when the fiscal year starts next
Okay,
year?
I don't know that because we don't know what's going to go down this
I mean, what have you
winter.
spent so far?
We'll have to get back.
I'll have
We'll-
to get
we'll-
back to
we'll
you.
get
I
back
wanna
to
give
you
you a
on
good
that.
number, I don't wanna just
But,
throw
okay,
a
I mean,
number out there.
are you, it's that it's a, I'm just trying to bracket it, and my own understanding is this, the primary issue is it's catastrophic, obviously, potentially. And it costs us a few $1,000s, which isn't to say that it's not still catastrophic. Or it's potentially catastrophic and it costs us 20 grand that we're just a sunk cost we're never gonna get back if this were advanced somehow. I'm not suggesting there's a method to advance it or to
I don't,
an
I think it's too
approval.
late for me to advance it.
Okay,
And I'll tell you why, because by the time I get through the procurement process, it's gonna be the end of September. By the time they order these things and get them on site, and we figure out how to open up the building, and it's winter. It's too late. If I got the okay at town meeting, and then I immediately put out the bid, and I'm ready to go July 1st,
Right.
that works. I think we're gonna have to limp through one more winter.
Okay.
Hopefully, I'm gonna say my prayers and say that we do okay, but I think it's too late. We're coming up on heating season, so
yeah.
I just don't see it with the procurement and contracts and ordering and lead times and.
Good enough, thank you, I appreciate it. So we're gonna jump to out years, we have 2 items. I'd just like to start with the ground equipment. We've got a request for FY '23 for 150. The only thing I'd like to know for the group is discussion, unless somebody wants to speak up, is there anything in there that's for FY '23 that is like some particular specialized piece of equipment, or this is just a general category?
It's general, it's trucks that I know are coming up for replacement, they're starting to wear, they're just older and they're aging, and it just, it's a responsible thing to do, to put them on a capital request to replace them.
Okay, any comments or questions on that? Okay, and then the next one would be the same kind of a approach, the NPS fencing replacement. Is this is like a particular special type of an area, or this is just general replacement?
This might go away once we start
The
moving
master.
fields.
Okay,
Because when we build a field, we're going to include the fencing in it. So some of this was up by the football field, the baseball field, the fencing is old, the football field fencing right now, it really has had it. Joe and I looked at it the other day, I was like, "Ugh." I said, should we be looking at this? And he's like, we'll just get through this until, if we move that field, it's gonna be built in. So I don't know that that's going to stay. The initial thought, the reason it went in there originally was because of we're looking around at our maintenance, and some of these fences they're rusted, they're broken, they're old. So
We've done a lot, though, in the
We
last
have.
few years,
I agree.
incorporated
Okay.
into the campus-wide work that we've done. So
so
we've,
general replacements.
yeah,
Okay, good. Just fair warning, it's a year in advance. We are I am gonna be pushing, I think, that we are documenting along the lines of what I spoke of earlier with respect to kind of subcategories, making attachments and a requirement for a request to be submitted. It's a kind of a new thing, you know, this is the second or third year of this system, but it's a new interface with the being online.
I'm only laughing because I was using the old system until about 2 weeks ago.
Oh, really?
No one,
Oh, no,
Sign us up.
I mean in terms of the SIP request form
Oh.
and asking for an attachment. That's been going on for a few years now, I think.
I think I attached
This is a
a
little
lot.
different.
The only thing I haven't done,
You-
Steve, is the spreadsheets.
Yeah, and this is not department specific, it's just, I'm gonna be saying to everyone, that that's what we're looking for. The idea being that we can review things in advance, ask, if you guys can come in, sit down, you know, we can say, oh, thanks for coming, we've reviewed your information, we have no questions. Sure. We'll go from there. So it helps you, help us, and you help, the process. Okay, hey, thanks a bunch for coming in, we
Thank
appreciate
you.
your time.
Thank you, guys.
It was nice to meet
Very
you.
nice to meet you.
Good luck. System on us.
Fun, fun.
Ready or not.
Go Whalers.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Go Whalers.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Go with you. And
Oh, I always
Am I?
end up going last.
See you later, Michael. Take care.
Should be there.
See ya.
Last year was the airport first. I don't wanna sit all the way on the end like that.
sit right here in the middle.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Excellent. Join the crowd.
Okay. Get these organized and start.
So welcome.
Thank you.
And you are,
Karen McGonigal, Chief Technology Officer for the town.
I'm sorry, I was gonna say you are ready to start.
Well, you told us
But now that you said that for Terry, I
Yeah.
can't click and talk at the same time. Nice job, Karen. Karen, if you wanna start with, any of the three, that would be great.
Okay, let me grab these requests. All right, I did upload some supporting documentation for 2 of the 3, but I have updated it since I made a submission. I don't know if you want a paper copy of the updated documentation. A little bit simpler, it's more summarized.
I would, and
Yep.
I appreciate it.
I
If
have
you wanna
multiple,
pass it
so
out,
if you
we
wanna
can
pass those
look at
out.
them over here. Sorry, I thought there was 2
The
there.
3 are network infrastructure, replace town computers, and server virtualization that we're talking about today, correct?
Yes.
Okay, we will start with server virtualization. That is an existing request of $75,000 on alternate years, which I am requesting will remain the same. And the only change is that this is not just server virtualization, it's also server maintenance, because we will be maintaining some physical on-site servers for the time being. This is the updated information. If you don't have it, there's a couple copies there. So the existing funding of $75,000 on alternate years is currently sufficient to provide adequate, upgrading and replacing of equipment moving forward. So there's really no change for that funding request except for what we're calling it.
Okay. And, questions? So I guess the only thing I'm kind of curious about is, can you characterize the server maintenance with respect to the capital versus an operating expense?
We're talking about physical servers, which are, assets, physical assets, with a lifespan of 5 years.
Yeah.
After 5 years, a file server is no longer maintainable by the vendor. It's essentially reached end of useful life as a file server, so every 5 years we need to replace those physical devices. We also need to make sure that we have a small inventory of spare equipment on site in the event of catastrophic hardware failure. That will not become as significant an issue once we virtualize all of our servers. But I'm sure you all remember when the Munis system failed several years ago. So we have to make sure that we have an inventory of physical servers to replace any physical servers that we're keeping on site. And there's several of them. Domain controllers, which manage logins. It is highly recommended to keep at least 1 physical server on site. Anything that serves as a web portal, such as our new employee self-serve application, that will stay on the physical server.
Karen, I'm
So,
sorry, I think I may have not.
Maybe I did not answer the
No, I
question
think I
correctly.
maybe didn't ask it the way I was intended to. The server, you're changing the, I understand the request to change the project name from
Yes.
server virtualization to add server maintenance. And what I'm asking is, that aspect of server maintenance, how is it that you're using server maintenance to include updates of the actual virtualization aspect, or is that personnel type work or
It is-
outsourcing? And that's what I'm trying to figure out, how we're relating that
Right.
back to the
Why
capital
it's
expense
capital.
versus an
No,
operating expense.
It is money to replace physical hardware.
Okay, that the virtuals
For-
are on,
The virtualization, the virtual farm
reside on.
is the server virtualization,
Okay.
and that's the hardware for the virtual farm. And then server maintenance aspect will cover any physical on-site servers that we keep in production. So
Okay.
we will have a hybrid environment where a few servers are kept physical on-site, but most of our environment will be virtualized. But this is all hardware.
Okay, I'm gonna go to Peter in just one second.
Yep.
So what I would like to suggest, Karen, if you don't mind,
Yep.
is that little long kind of sentence that you just explained, if that were the project summary as opposed to continued support of virtualization project, because this is the information that will also be conveyed in the recommendation. So if we understand in the recommendation that the addition of the server maintenance is the physical server side, as opposed, and you don't have to say as opposed to personnel or outsourcing actual service maintenance, that would be helpful.
Yep.
Peter?
And that was my point. It should say to maintain the existing physical servers, which is the older system, because maintenance, to me, if you look at it as a
Oh.
description, is repair and maintenance should be an operating expense.
And that is, and if I look at the way I worded this, yeah, it says be used to support the maintenance,
Yeah.
physical server and environment, and
So-
that's not clear to you.
So in this
I understand.
instance, just to make sure I understand, you're using server maintenance to really indicate maintenance that is replacement
Yes.
of the physical
Correct.
server. Okay. That information would be helpful in that summary, if you don't mind. Are there any other questions or comments? Great. Nat, I'm sure, where do you go? What would you like to hit next?
We will look at desktop, laptop replacement plan.
Okay.
And that is the replace town computers item. In the document that I had uploaded to the system, I had included three scenarios, but the recommended scenario was the one for $62,800 per year, moving forward over a 10-year period. And this will allow for regularly scheduled replacement of equipment as it reaches its useful lifespan. In the case of desktop computers, that will be every 5 years. And in the case of laptops, that will be every 3 years. And the spreadsheet that, shows this schedule over a 10-year period, those numbers may fluctuate a little bit depending on, we may need more laptops 1 year, or so that balance may change somewhat, but it provides us with a regularly scheduled update so that we don't end up having to replace 80 devices 1 year and then 5 the next year, where eventually it's going to go on 30 desktop devices every year and approximately 16 laptop devices every year. This does not cover a replacement cycle for tablets.
Okay.
That's how this is working, so that we're on a regular schedule of every year funding of $62,800. Previously, it was $50,000, but after running the numbers with an anticipated 5% increase in the cost of the hardware every year, it came out to a little bit higher number.
Okay, anyone comments, thoughts on that?
Just that, I see you have a
Jason and
5% increase
Right.
in there, which is great. So over 8 years from now, that means I see you'll still be able to buy 25 every year?
Um,
With the increase, it seems, I feel like that number would
The
go
new-
down.
Yeah, or
with
the
increase.
funding should increase by 5% every year, right? So-
Yeah.
right, if you look at the 5-year schedule
Yeah.
on the updated summary, it's 30 devices per year. And, I see what you're saying, because what it balances out over the 10-year period. If you look at it, some years it's actually, the balance is in a minus, but it balances out over time.
Okay. I just wanna make sure you have
Yep.
enough money in the out years.
Yep. Yep, there should be, actually, if it actually stays exact to this and there's a 5% increase based on these estimates, there'd be $900
Left.
extra.
We appreciate your keeping track. Peter?
Just more, it's probably more operational, but seeing, Karen, you have over 200 units between laps and desktops.
Yep.
Do you log or have any statistics on login by each desktop or laptop and how often they're used, when they're actually being used instead of just logged in and logged out? Do you have any of that data?
I don't have that at hand.
Because I look at it as productivity. If I give an
Um,
employee a computer and it just sits and it's never used, then
I would
next summer
venture
replace
that
it, I don't.
there's probably a percentage of laptops that are not used all of the time. We have an inventory of IT laptops that are used for training or for when my staff needs to go out on site. They're not used constantly. The desktops are used daily by employees because that's what they use to do their work. So I would say that 95% of those are probably in use every day.
Thank you, Karen. So I would ask that you would upload through finance, please, the
Yeah, I have-
updated version of the desktop replacement 10-year plan. And
Right, Brian needs to open that for me to be able to do that, so.
your spreadsheet as an attachment would be great if you could include that. And then the switch replacement, you could upload
Yep.
to when we get to that. And then I just have a question on the computer. So, let's see here. So is there a cost included in this, or is it covered in your operating budget for malware and, I don't know the right terms at this point, but I was recently reading about basically many of the municipalities in the state of Texas have
Ransomware.
had ransomware, yeah, thank you, takeovers. Is that, and I'm not asking, I guess I'm softballing for you to say, oh yeah, we do this, we do that, but I'm kind of curious where the cost comes in for that type of thing. Is it an operating expense?
It's an operating expense, yes, and we have, mail filtering, monitoring, in place. We're actually right in the middle of a major security assessment. I won't go into details
Yeah,
because we don't want people to know what we're planning on doing. Where we're testing our network vulnerabilities both internally and externally on the network, because this is a huge issue with municipalities, schools, and other public sector organizations. They're being specifically targeted
Yeah.
by these hackers, where previously it was private industry. Right now, public sector is the primary target, and it's a big issue for us. So we're working very hard to mitigate that risk, and it's also going to include staff education and training in collaboration with human resources. But that's all in operating.
Is there, just while we're on the topic, is there any collaboration, or do you see a benefit for collaboration with the school, since they have their own IT, and they do have a distributed model of laptops, computers? It's not like perhaps the police station, which is a little more centralized. But do you see any benefit in collaborating in that security analysis and training with them, or no?
Yes, and since I came from the school and I was there for 11 years, I'm pretty familiar with their environment, and the director of technology there, Jen Erickson, and I have had some discussions on that. We haven't moved forward with it yet, but once we have our training program, the training program in place, they may be interested in collaborating with us on that, and I see that. I'm hoping that we can work with them more as time goes on, because we are physically connected to them as we are to the airport.
Yeah, okay, that was what I was wondering, is if we're actually
Right.
connected.
Yes, we have fiber connections between both the airport and the school district, because they use our Munis financial systems.
Okay, well, that's,
Yep.
glad to hear you're on it.
Yep.
Any other thoughts or questions?
Just a quick question, I think we had discussed this before, but to refresh my memory, what is our kind of contractual agreement or for, you know, do we purchase and then resell back to Dell the computers and laptops, or is it kind of a cycling enterprise hardware agreement? Like, are we buying these, you know, commercial rate, using them for 3 years, then just selling them out to the market used, or do they take them back at a pre-established price?
Right now, we are purchasing them outright. Leasing has, so far has not been cost effective.
Okay.
At this time, until we get a regular cycle of 5-year plan in place, historically, they have been used until they die and they become disposed. I'm working with, Graham at DPW on, doing some better recycling with them, but the hard drives are removed from the systems and shredded and certified by, a company that does that, so there's no data going with them. But they are typically disposed of, because by that time they've reached their complete
Useful life. So
useful
there's
life.
no-
But the recycling firms that take these, equipment, we can either send them back to Dell under their recycling program, or the recycle them out to these third-party vendors, and what they do is they will take parts,
Strip them down and
strip
see
them
what they can
down,
resell
or they
themselves.
will
and-
sell them if they can, so
Yeah.
the service is free.
Yeah.
They take them, they do what they need to do with them.
So you've looked into the leasing agreements also, that where they
Yeah.
cycle them through every 3 years, regardless of how
Right.
well they're functioning, and it's just a, you know, a set annual price for
Right.
X amount of units.
I've looked at it a little bit, I have not explored it in detail in the past. It hasn't been cost effective for us.
I think just
way we use
the
our equipment.
bank that I work for with 500 employees, I think that's kind of their
Yep.
enterprise leasing agreement
And
that
it's
we're
definitely
on.
something that's always on the radar
Mhm.
every year to make that comparison.
I think it can be good because, like you said, you know, technology and hardware is changing so quickly
Yes.
that, you know, you might be using the same laptop for, you know, 5 years past when they would have recommended that you switch to
Exactly.
a newer, lighter, smaller, more efficient, more secure, whatever it might be.
And we're, like I said, we're always exploring the options.
Thank you.
Okay, good. So this, bear with me one second, I wanted to
I think
look
the
back at something
switch one might
on
be up to date, but I have to check. Network infrastructure.
okay. Yeah, so just on that, there's a you're using just terminology, this is for later in the process. Technology infrastructure in your summary sheet that you provided. And then it's listed under the projects as network infrastructure. So I think we just need to make sure we're tracking, because not in all the information is the actual code of the request
Okay, I
transmitted.
did not use the same wording on this.
Yeah, so
You're
just so
correct,
you're
yeah.
aware that it will make it a little
It's
bit
actually
easier.
network infrastructure. That should be network infrastructure on the document.
That would be awesome. And then with respect to the project summary, Karen, if you could again just kind of transfer the summary of what you've provided here this morning into your project summary on the, in the software, that
Yeah,
would be
we'll
very helpful.
re-upload everything and correct the name on that.
Okay, thank
that
you.
Summary.
And then with that out of the way, I'd ask you just to go ahead and launch.
Okay, so essentially we are asking for, what's my summary? Previously, the funding for network infrastructure was for FY '20, $250,000, because we're looking at a fiber project that we're in the process of implementing. But ongoing, it was $100,000 in FY '21, 50 in '23, and 125, and that was to cover, you know, all network infrastructure expenses such as switches and network equipment. After some discussion, we decided it would be more efficient to change this to $50,000 annually on a regular basis so that there was always funding available for network switches, any cabling such including copper and fiber, security appliances such as firewalls, and spam filters and move that type of hardware into the network infrastructure capital funding area. So that is the reasoning for, it really hasn't changed the amount of funding, it's just changed how the funding is being allocated on an annual basis.
Okay,
And like I said, that I did put in a 10-year switch replacement plan, which only part of this funding request covers, because there's still more money left over if you look at the spreadsheet. And so it would be, what did I do about, over a 10-year period, the switches take about maybe a little more than half of the requested funding, and the balance will be utilized for other projects such as fiber and cabling. That would include any construction for that. Like I said, the security appliances, all of that hardware that's at the moment under the previous method of managing this. Some of it was in capital and some of it was in operating, and it was very difficult to keep track of. So I'm trying to move the hardware, the actual physical assets into the capital funding, and then we can keep the maintenance and operating.
okay, that makes sense.
So that's the reasoning for this, and I felt that having a regular allocation every year would be, make it a little bit easier to budget, plan.
Okay. Questions, comments? So just a couple procedural things, Karen, if you guys think of anything, chime up. So in the software interface, it's still at the 100,000, so obviously that'll be updated. Our forms in the Nantucket Capital Request.org list it at 100,000 for FY21. And then the other thing is, I mean, correct me if I'm misunderstanding this, but so you're submitting under the network infrastructure project umbrella, which is an annual request for planning purposes, specifically switch replacement plan. And this is for a 1 year, or this is for a 10-year?
The switch replacement plan is a 10-year replacement plan for
That's-
our switches.
Okay, so that's what I thought looking at this. So
Yes.
what I'm gonna suggest, and, I'll have to speak to Brian about it, is that we would create, how we do it in the software, this would be a little bit different than, for instance, I'll use an example, the building, there's different ways we could skin this. It could be that it would be a subcategory, so using the school as an example, under building improvements, shingling every year would be a subcategory, and there was a 10-year plan for that. However, this seems to rise to a significant enough level, and I think with respect to project management, which is where the software database is being developed to turn this into seamlessly push buttons and turn it into project management, is that this would be a child of the original request coding. So this would be, we'll have to figure out how we want to deal with that with the finance department, and it will be subject to how they, Brian wants to address it. But I think it needs to be categorized as a subcategory, and it's an independent plan. So I just want to make you aware of my thoughts on that, so that if you get an email at some point in the future, you have some idea what the heck is going on, as opposed to from finance. You have an understanding of what would be trying to be accomplished.
Yeah, I don't know if did we talk about making this a subcategory during the original? I don't believe so.
Because otherwise, what's going to happen is we're going to have, more particularly when it comes to project management, but also just when we're sitting here trying to figure out and track requests, we'll have this request, which is a 10-year plan, but then we may have network infrastructure projects that happen only once every 5 years or every 10 years. So separating those out under the network infrastructure as subcategories, as individual projects with their own code, I think is going to be beneficial to everyone in their various capacities.
Understood.
Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Good. And that was a lot easier to do versus trying to send an email and explain it at some point in the future.
And that makes perfect sense, exactly.
Okay,
Because some of these, you know, items for network infrastructure aren't on a regular replacement cycle.
Sure.
So, yeah, exactly where the switches will be.
yeah, so we'll
Yep,
have that.
that makes
Okay.
sense.
Any other comments or questions or thoughts on these? Okay, we're gonna jump to out years, and, with respect to out years, if I could guide discussion a little bit. We're looking at, the digital imaging, GIS digital imaging updates was a previous request
Yep.
scheduled for FY '22. Nothing out of the ordinary there, just focusing on exceptions to what you originally planned. You're
Nope,
not-
it's every 4 years, we redo you know, the images for the GIS system to make sure that everything's up to date. You know, new properties, new roads, things like that.
Okay, so then out years with respect to network infrastructure, subject to the discussion we just had, this $50,000 is intended to be for the switch replacement, or this is intended to be a placeholder of approximately $50,000, and we will see the switch replacement plan added?
Added in there, but that will be part of that $50,000.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yep.
And then.
About 40% of the 50,000.
Okay, thank you. Any
Yep.
questions or thoughts on that? Replace town computers is self-explanatory. The server virtualization is on its plan. I did have a question for you on that, if you guys will indulge me. Karen, where are you on operating increases, if any, in operating? With the question not being those increases, but how do they compare to what you anticipated they may be for using and upkeep on the server virtualization? Is it meeting the metrics that you anticipated, or is there, I'm just kind of curious where it's panning out?
In the operating budget area,
Just capital and operating, yeah.
since we are in the very beginning
Too early.
phases of virtualization, we haven't even completed migrating all of the servers over. That's a difficult question to answer.
That's a sufficient answer. And the reason I asked it, not to cut you off, but the reason I asked is I was just kind of curious because this came up with the school and they're talking about doing virtualization. And if there were some, red lines or bumps in the road that you had identified early, it would be good to share
Right.
with them. The only other one I have is for network infrastructure, looking at your out years, you do a bump up in 26 to 500,000. And I'm just curious if you can
26,
articulate what that,
where is that?
FY '26, we have a bump up in the network infrastructure to a $500,000 expenditure.
I don't have that in here.
You-
That might have been Brian just did this the other day.
That might have been an error. That should have been
Typo.
50,000. I think that was a typo, yeah.
Okay,
Because
so
I didn't get the updated one.
if you would be so kind, when you're tracking the other revisions and updates, if
Yeah.
you could make sure that that gets addressed, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I didn't get a copy of that one.
Yeah, so it's just, it
I
lists,
I didn't
that
see
wasn't
it, yeah.
Karen. We'll make a note for Brian.
yeah, well, I'm just trying to,
Is it in the spreadsheet?
it's in our SIP, which is the 10-year plan, and for the 17001, it indicates 500,000.
Oh, it is in there. Okay, I'm sorry, I did not see that because I did look at this morning.
So I was hoping just to pass that back to you, because
Yeah, no, that has to be a typo.
if everyone's
Yeah.
responsible, no one's
Yep.
accountable, all that
Yep.
stuff. Any other questions for Karen? Comments? Okay. Well, hey, look, we really appreciate you coming in. Thank you. This was very helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
All right. So with that, guys, I think we could go right to Rory's if we want to do any discussion before those get filled out.
I've already done the school ones.
You did yours, you're good?
The school ones, yeah. The
Okay.
stuff here is out of my league that you just did. I just say, okay, and that's done.
That's good.
But what are you gonna do? You know what I mean? It's like, okay, thought we just did the GIS thing, but
It's every 4 years.
is it?
Yeah,
I remember this recently talking about that.
yeah, we just did it, last 2 weeks before.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, as long as it helps Nathan Porter, that's a big deal. That
That's a
stuff
big
has
deal
to
for
work
Nathan, yes,
to
it is.
everybody.
ITS.
Okay, thank you,
Yes.
everyone.
Take care.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Thanks
Karen.
again.
Thanks, Karen. Nice to see you.
People be offended if I tried to kill this fly.
No, please.
Do it.
No, actually, that
Two
would
winged
kind of,
friends.
could be
I
dramatic.
know, sometimes I
She's-
feel guilty
was at
for
school
it, but,
before, that's
The question is,
why.
what's the probability of gonna actually be?
oh,
Should
challenge
work under
accepted.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You usually end up killing them.
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm pretty good.
You get rubber.
I want to just see that out of the corner of my eye, that's all. Okay, so are we saying we're good with Rory's? We don't need any
Well, I
discussion?
just said, did Brian make it so we can change them, Rebecca, do you know?
What?
Did Brian?
Not yet,
He did, Pete.
not yet,
Oh, not yet, okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So
What
if
was
you
the question?
put them in, whether the Rory values can be changed once you've saved them.
Press the save.
We're gonna add, I'm gonna do a quick rundown on that stuff. I just wanna make sure that we're not missing an opportunity to discuss things about the school
Yeah.
while we're all here. Or the projects, or about the IT requests.
Well,
Richard?
With school, one thing we forgot
Yes,
is
sir.
the money in the out years for the new building.
I didn't get into that because it's down as 29 now that it's in there. I did pull the request, the submission from the SIP from last budget season. It didn't go out to 29, so it was not in there. As Nat said, that topic kind of sneaked out somewhere, so
Did.
now that it's out there, I think it's, I mean, I wouldn't say it snuck out, I think it should be out there, I think we should be doing the ideas, not, you know what I mean.
You just don't want it to become, we're building a new school because there
Yeah.
are too many people in Nantucket. I hate that. It needs to be explained that this is a really good plan,
It's a budget,
strategic.
it's a budget.
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I think the guy's doing a great job.
Any other thoughts on school stuff? So I don't know where you are the liaison and you are the liaison, so, I don't know if they've reached out to you, but let's get your feedback. Do you still think it's worthwhile to be going after the fact and looking at anything, for this budget season, or?
I think of all of the people that we listen to, that they come the most prepared.
Yep,
Yeah.
they do.
And they give the
Totally agree.
better
Best plan.
presentations. I can't think of anything I'd need to revisit.
The only thing I have a question about, the tennis courts, but I don't know where that fits, because I haven't heard one peep about a tennis court in 30 years.
Yeah,
All
I
of a
just-
sudden, the tennis,
It's-
do
well,
we
they
even play
have-
It's a
tennis?
sport.
Yes, they
Just
have
started,
teams now.
just started.
I thought we didn't play tennis.
It's
Just
new.
It's a new program.
Those damn fast ferries, making it easy to play more.
Peter, did you have a comment?
No, the other thing I would do is look at more space for equipment.
Okay.
Inside
That's
space?
probably part of the master plan, I would hope. It's just a sin to put anything outside,
They
So-
said they store everything inside, right, as of
except for the
now?
Bobcat.
Yeah.
Except for the Bobcat.
So I
But
think
it's
what.
got a cabin, it's air conditioned and heated,
Yeah,
it's
it's got a radio.
It's all like that now.
Um,
Your car has
All
that?
normal.
Yeah, you get
Yes.
a employee lawsuit otherwise. I think what I might suggest then is when we bring up the topic of liaisons, and Brian is here, because Brian was gonna send an email out to the departments, is that maybe when he sends the one out to the school, it would be an opportunity for the liaisons to kind of talk about a little bit about the complex master plan,
Yeah.
which is complex, but for the complex. And then that would be a time to maybe get into those things about space and,
Well, it's good also to meet the new superintendent.
yeah, definitely.
This is good.
I didn't
I don't know.
actually, that clicked, but it didn't fully click. Okay, thank you for that.
Where'd Jason go?
Any
Jason
other,
here? His
Yeah, I
computer's
think he
here.
took a phone call.
Oh,
any other thoughts on school or IT? Okay, so we're gonna just quickly move to, I don't think there's anything for green sheets at this point. Good of the order, I just give you guys an update. So I did meet with Brian about various topics. One of the things that got advanced, and I haven't heard back yet, he's actually away for a scheduled, is the sprinkler system, and whether the main piping replacement, this is at our island home,
Oh.
whether that's something that can wait, or if there's, and if it can't, whether there is funding somewhere in place to be advancing that. And where he had left it, when we spoke here at the meeting, was that if they had to, they would find funding, but I wanna just do our due diligence and not have that fall apart literally on the occupants and have Brett think that it's just tied up. So we may, the two parts of that discussion are, can there be funding be had? And if so, we would need to discuss a recommendation based on what the actual numbers are gonna be. Peter?
So I would say if I were Stephen and I were the chair, I would ask Brian to provide to us what the procedure is currently
Yeah.
within the Commonwealth and within Nantucket when an emergency system comes up as to life safety. There is a process, a procedure. We should know that because,
Yeah.
and then their discussion is not really nothing. It's just more, hey, we're letting you know this fell apart. This is what
Yeah.
goes into effect.
Yep, I agree, point well taken, I've got similar in my notes. So that was an important topic, I'll keep in my tickler file here. The other thing is kind of a list of items to address with the forms, I'm not gonna get into all of it. We've discussed it in the past. But one of the things, Nat, you brought up, so one of the things we're gonna be doing is adding a feature or correcting the feature so that you can save and edit your Rory numerical values. We're gonna be adding a code and a project request cost to the head of the, when you're in a request, it will be at the top of the page. So that the code is there, because if you're cross-referencing it, well, great example was the network infrastructure versus technology infrastructure example earlier with Karen. If you have the code there, it kind of simplifies things. And having the cost on that page will carry through whenever you're reviewing any of the individual pages.
Yeah, which page are you talking
So
about?
when you-
The
when
Rory
you-
summary page or the intro
When you,
within each Rory?
I've actually asked for it to be on that too.
That also?
And then when you click on the Rory and you click on a particular request, on that nice blue that's there, that,
on one of these pages, the intro page, or when you actually click into the Rory for
yeah,
the
it'd be
request?
right under, it'd be at the heading right there, yeah. So you'll have a code and a cost.
Yeah, I mean, I think there could be even, I don't know if there's a way to aggregate more important details from the other sub-tabs to put on that page, because I feel like, let's say you go to prioritization, and there's really one thing that you're looking for there, and you're not looking for 15 red X's in one check mark, you know, it's
Yeah.
like, it'd be nice if you could just have what's their priorities, a low elective, medium, recommended, high, degradation on that intro page. Also, I don't know if there's a way to funnel that information through.
So it's good point. What the discussion is right now, I put in the request, as opposed to trying to break that down and not be certain what people would like to see on different, as their aggregation. Different members may want to see different information aggregated, is that simply we'll be able to press a button and the SIP request form in its totality will pop up as a 2-page PDF. So you can actually have that open, and if you have that open in one window, and you can have the supplemental information that was an attachment open,
Right.
and you can kind of flip through it a little
Yeah.
bit.
'Cause it seems like having 10 different tabs, each with really one piece of information that you're looking for just right off the bat, you start having to fly around and,
That's not how my brain works either, so
yeah. If you could have it all, it's like a general introduction that's like, and again, everyone has their own idea of what's important, but I think generally speaking, there's a couple, key pieces that everyone would think is, yeah, I'd like to know that right off the bat.
Okay, yeah, I agree, and I think
Only
that.
if it's possible, if it's not, then.
I think if we can put the code and the cost with the title, that covers one level of aggregation,
Cost,
which is the, 1,000 foot. And then the SIP request form as a PDF covers being able to quickly flip through it. Or the other option with that is if there's a project and someone wants to, if you want to print it out, you'd have to print out each tab. But you could just print out a 2-page report if you wanted to, and then make notes on it if there's a particular project of interest to someone. Or you're going to meet as a liaison and you've got some questions. It's just another way to do it, and it's relatively simple. It's just a matter of getting the report done through the service provider. The other thing I just mentioned is that one of the things we're gonna be able to do, I'm hoping, at least, I don't think it'll be the next meeting, but the following, will be to be able to click and sort and look at the SIP for as many years back as the information is in there and as many years forward as the information is in there. And to select the to select the timeline, and also to determine which departments. So if you just wanted a view of the school department for 3 years, whatever the 3 years are, you'd click in through the upper margin, you'd be able to select that information, and it would bring up a report that could be sent out as a PDF if you wanted to print it, or it would be in Excel, but we've talked about doing it as a PDF also. So just so you guys are aware, the out years, we will be able to generate ourselves in any level of detail we'd like across any time span.
Because right now we can't access out years, right?
Yeah, we don't have any access to that, and it will just make it simpler for staff, the finance department, to not have to do that on a regular basis. We can look at it ourselves when we're doing a review of departments prior to a meeting. Those were kind of the highlights of the open items with the database. Covered the sprinkler system.
What about the
Yeah.
tile, ceiling tile? Was that withdrawn?
No, that's subject to review by town admin, and then it sounded to me, I don't know to you guys, but it sounded like that may come back in a different
Yep.
form.
Yeah, you remember, Richard, they put a bid in for like the metal part,
Everything.
and they didn't mean, well, not that they didn't mean to, but that got picked up on, I don't know who said it, is it you? Somebody brought it up really fast, like,
Yeah.
what are we doing? You know what I mean, just grab the tiles and change them, just because they look bad doesn't mean the
Yeah,
whole
paint it.
thing's bad, you know?
No, I was just curious if
Yeah.
they'd withdrawn that as
I don't believe so.
I think it's gonna come back.
Where
yeah.
it was left was town admin needs to weigh in,
Okay.
and also Brett had some direction on how it might be more palatable and get it done quicker
Yeah.
by cutting the cost down and doing it
Can I
operating.
just bring up that sprinkler thing again?
Yep.
Was that a dry system or wet? I think it was dry.
It's dry.
All
So
right,
the issue is
what
when they
happens
test
is
it.
it's got a hole in it, no one knows, and it gets tested, blows the hole out.
Right, and then by
Kinda,
by
something like that.
by testing it, they can't
Because
get
it's
all
got the
the,
low spots that's sitting there with oxygen in there, and it's rotting the pipe from the inside.
well, yeah,
It's
the
air.
water is puddling, they can't
Yeah.
they can't fully drain it after they test it. Because I don't think you can, well, actually, you know what, I don't understand why you wouldn't, well. Blow it out. You don't wanna blow it out because then you're gonna activate those
Sprinklers.
sprinkler heads and then you're gonna be having a problem.
Because the roof is open, and it's cold in the winter, there's all these different reasons that they did it this way.
Oh, sure,
In the
sure.
older construction.
But that pipe is in the mechanical space, which is above the first floor, which is heated because
Yeah.
that's the nature of the mechanics.
And there's actually now UL listed,
So you've looked at this
antifreeze.
already, okay.
There's now UL listed antifreeze products for commercial and residential systems, so if there was any issue with potential freeze. They have solutions, but the cheapest solution sounds like replacing the main pipe,
Yeah.
given that the structure may be replaced in a number of years. Any thoughts, good of the order?
No. On that land thing,
Yeah,
when they go back, I'm sure that they're engaging Ken Bogran a little bit more now on this stuff too. Because we gotta figure that out for them.
right, so I wasn't trying to be short,
It
but I
does
wanted
need
to
be
keep it
taken
short.
off the list, is because it creates confusion. As long as there's a system getting worked on, but it can't go on like the warrant again. You know what I mean, Rebecca?
Like I mentioned, Brian said that right now it's just sort of, we're not really doing anything with it because he and Libby need to have a lot more discussion about it. So for now, it's just staying where it is. If nothing goes forward with it in the future, then yes, we'll take it off the list. But for right now, it's just staying where it is.
Right, so,
Okay.
what I would like to do is, let's add it to our agenda for our next meeting, and what will happen is we will talk about it very briefly, just to get some handles on it. And I'll define those in a minute, just for our general consumption, but it may be something we carry over to a future agenda when both Brian and Libby are here and we have time. But the idea, at least for, I think, our committee, is whether it carries forward as a school request, or it carries forward as a town request, or a
Right.
town-oriented
It
thing.
could be part of the real estate fund, it could be part of some other,
Right, but,
some pot of gold they already have in the bank somewhere that would be part of the school.
right, and I just wanna have I think we, as a committee, I wanna have a brief discussion, so we get a handle on it, so it's not something that's being talked about in the town, because it's misunderstood that
Yeah,
it's being reviewed as simply school property acquisition, if
Right,
that's.
that was
if-
brought up the
yeah.
last year.
So I just wanna make sure that we get a handle on it, I think it could take a life on its own, and I would prefer that we not have to deal with that, because it creates a lot of angst for people unnecessarily if it's not gonna be just the school.
Should we do a Rory for that one? Probably doesn't matter at this point. I already did one, but
I would characterize it as do the Rory, cause it's in our pipe, and if we don't do anything with it, it's it's done.
Gotcha.
But that's the other thing, I don't wanna have it in the plan
No.
if it's not part of
Right.
our planning process. In future years. Any other thoughts, guys? Gals?
Would you like to meet next Thursday?
Yeah, I think that we should schedule, I would like to schedule for Thursday, and I know Brian's away until Monday, but we would need to figure out which department is up next. Is there,
I know we had at one point talked about having sewer come. We did want to have Libby here for that, just because they're such a huge department.
and
But we can talk to Brian about that.
I talked to Brian about sewer, so David is not gonna be ready for us. He's just got attachments that he's working through. So I don't know if there's another department. I think what I'd like to suggest is we will schedule our meeting for next Thursday, September 5th, 10 a.m. here. And I will determine in the meantime which department we're working with. And if we can't get something set up without chasing our tails, I don't want to have incomplete information, then we can always cancel the meeting.
If
Yeah,
we
but
do
you got
end
that
up
Monday posting issue.
Well, we can get something posted.
posted,
Oh.
Yeah, we
Is
could.
that okay? Okay, I'm just curious,
We
because
can always
that day
update
doesn't
it.
count as a day and all that.
Yeah, and I mean, you could post, if you had to, you could post different departments. And we can always just, you could post all the departments that haven't been reviewed yet. And we can
Right.
cross them off the list.
once
Yeah.
it's posted, we can update the agenda too.
Update it. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes it simpler.
If we do find a department to meet next Thursday, would you prefer to be meeting in the community room?
Okay, so that, I mentioned earlier to Rebecca and Ally, is just, when we had this before, and I think we're gonna have it again, is that when we're meeting departments, I think if we're just IT, here is fine. But I think we should meet in the community room, so if there's any kind of an overflow, even just people who come to sit,
Most
it's
other
just simpler.
departments probably won't have that
crew.
many people.
Yeah.
The only other department I think that's at this point gonna have more than one person is when we do DPW transportation, but that'll just be Rob and Mike.
Airport.
Airport,
Oh, because the staff.
yeah, and
You're
I,
not talking about like a crowd of people showing up at one of these.
no,
meetings.
I
Okay.
hope not, but,
Yeah.
well, when
Well,
we do
maybe
this,
airport, I guess,
if we
but-
do the senior center, that's gonna be a crowd of people.
Good.
Well, but I'm just thinking
Yeah.
department head
Yeah.
meeting.
Well, DPW will probably be, Rob has Mike, transportation, and I don't know if he's gonna bring his deputy directors. But you know what, we can do this offline.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
There's no
could be a
reason
judgment
to,
call, too.
yeah.
Makes that quicker.
Bacon.
Okay, any other thoughts before we get a motion to adjourn?
I will not be here next Thursday.
Okay,
Nor will I say so.
okay. So it might be a good time for a light week. Richard?
I'm here, but I'm not here September 27th and October, whatever that is.
Okay,
27th is a Friday, so that's okay.
26th,
26th.
yeah.
I
Okay.
happen to know, because I'm going away, so.
All right, did I hear a motion to adjourn?
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Just watch.